I would like to first of all welcome you to Busongora Kingdom and to Kamero Palace here. My name is King Ndahura II Kashagama of Busongora. I think we're here today to talk about land reform and Busongora, as well as any other issues of interest. And I'm also hoping that the public and members of the Busongora community can learn something about what's going on today in Busongora regarding land issues. The land wrangles began about 100 years ago because of the change in the land tenure system. When the kingdoms fell in the 1890s and the early 20th century, the British and European governments around East and Central Africa introduced new systems, and they gave lands under tenure systems that are complicated to understand and which seem somewhat unfair to people, because land was being used by the community with a clear goal and responsibilities, and then they said no, you're going to have to get a title and you have to fence, and there's this trespass charge now, and there's this. So and on top of that, in the last 20-30 years, people have learned how to monetize land. They sell land and buy land, and this is something new to people. So we have concerns in terms of who actually owns this land and who can sell it. And I think it's not just a problem for Uganda, it's a problem all over the planet. In the meantime, I think that the courts have to be empowered to have more judges and make more cases so they can get rid of the backlog. I know that the Law Reform Commission is working on a project to see if they can get the traditional court systems back so as to ease the backlog. Certain things don't have to go to court. If somebody moves your boundaries and you don't trust the LC chairman, maybe they're involved in the land boundary theft, then you can go to the traditional institution and have the elders sit and solve that thing without having to call expensive lawyers and go to drive to Fort Portal to the court, and call the magistrate and have locus. Things that could be resolved easily now have to go to courts. And I think that's part of the problem, that people get frustrated and angry, and then somebody takes a machete and cuts another person. So I think that the situation is getting under control. In the case of Kasese and Busongora specifically, we've had really big land wrangle issues. But I think that since 2012, the communities have begun to understand that their rights, each community has rights and their territories and things that need to be understood as belonging to one community or to another, and that's going to be useful. And the cultural institutions, since they were revived in 2009, and then for the Bakonzo, and then for the Banyabindi and Busongora in 2012, and even the others, I think that people are beginning to understand that women have rights on the land. If they feel aggrieved, they can go to the cultural institution and ask for help. And so they're not going to be taken advantage of in the name of tradition, because people have been saying, women, once their husband dies, they can get expelled and lose property. Or like when you're giving land out, communal land, you only give to the men, the women don't get any property. So we're trying to stop that kind of behavior, to tell people, look, women should be treated equitably with men. In Busongora has been a problem because the lands that were given to Busongora in 2007, the vast majority of these lands were given to men. The men decided to share amongst themselves, and the men who had money got more pieces and more land than those who did not have money. And when the cultural institution was revived, initially we tried to avoid getting involved in land issues. But then constantly we're bombarded by this issue, because people who are not having employment or medicine, money to buy medicine, or who are homeless, they still come back and say, look, I never got any land. So-and-so got 15 acres, but I wasn't given any. But another Busongora has 600 acres of community land. Another one has control over 300 acres. You know, I'm not a member of this cooperative or this cluster or this whatever. And we're finding that people don't have representation. So what we did was to go through the documents that the government provided us relating to the land grants that were given to Busongora. Initially, the land grants date back actually to the 1930s, because when the Busongora were expelled and their land turned into national parks around 1910, you know, there were those Busongora who kept trying to get back, and in the 1930s they resettled in some places. Again in the 1950s, in the 1960s, when Busongora began returning from the Congo, who had been sent there by the wars, the Legico at the time, the first modern parliament that Uganda had, was called Legico, the Legislative Assembly at the time. One of the first members was a Busongora professor, Mbabi Katana, who appealed to the government, the colonial government, not to send Busongora to Panyamor in northern Uganda to a refugee camp, and said, look, Kasese, Queen Elizabeth Park, Ibanda, and the areas around the parks here belong to Busongora. Why don't you resettle them in their home area? So the government agreed. But you know, the services were few, population has grown, land was given again in 1974, the area of Mohocha, Chisongora. And also in 67, when the Toro Kingdom was removed from here, after the kingdoms were abolished, the government returned the enclave in Hamkungu, which is inside the park, but it's settled by Busongora, as well as other areas, Kantunguru, Katwe, Kahendero, and other areas. But the populations have grown. There's land wrangles right now. And we went through the documents and we realized the government actually required the community to set up what they called a community land trust. The trust system is not very common anywhere in the world. I think trusts have been used beginning in the 70s in Australia. I checked, I think the whole of the United States has about 124 trusts only. In Britain they have been around a bit longer, but they're only now getting larger. And what they do is they control the price of land. That way it doesn't explode and cause people to leave and become homeless. You know, people are under pressure. If you have expensive land, the government will charge you taxes and say, you know, you have to pay a high tax. If you can't afford to pay the tax because it's not a commercial property, it's a residential property, what happens, people will sell their land and move and go somewhere else and rent. And we want to avoid this early. So we went to the government and said, look, we want to set up a trust. We went through the procedures. We went to the interministerial committee, asked for permission, they explained the procedure and said, look, customary land in Uganda, communal land, is managed by the traditional authorities. They're the ones who have jurisdiction over this kind of property. So it forced the traditional institution, Busongora Kingdom, to now go and initiate the process of acquiring a community land trust and to manage it. So the trust now has directors, but they work hand in hand with the council of clan heads and community leaders. That council is led by Mzee Kafuda, Eric, and other elders, and they passed a resolution during a very hard time, during the Corona lockdown, and we went through the procedures and had the Ministry of Lands approve and create the trust. We're now trying to sensitize people. We've been trying since before we made the trust, but even after, to teach people what does the trust do, what should you expect, how can you participate? Because many people are afraid. The benefits of having a trust are many. The biggest benefit is that the trust can hire professional land managers to assist the community to raise funds for projects without actually getting money from the peasants and people in the community. That means, for instance, the trust will have the trustees who are all members of the community. The beneficiary of the trust is the community itself. And so what happens is the trustees sit in a meeting which should be open and accessible to any beneficiary. Any member of the community who wants to attend a trust meeting has to be able to attend and to ask questions and to have answers given. And if the answers are not given, then they can take recourse and complain to the Minister of Lands or to the magistrate and say, well, I'm a beneficiary of this trust, but I'm not being heard, Land is being divided, I did not get the correct amount, so I want my land to be increased or my boundary to be moved. And so the trust has to come and send managers to that area and help you. Right now, that process did not exist. The LC ones got involved, but then there's a lot of not being aware of what the rights of the community are. And when you go to the local authorities, the district authorities, they will say, we don't know who the land belongs to. Where's the title? You see. So the trust is allowed to actually acquire land title on behalf of the community, as opposed to each individual member trying to get a title when they have no evidence of ownership. If the land is owned by another type of organization, like say a cooperative, cooperatives require people to pay membership fees. They require rules which prohibit perpetual membership, and a lot of turnover of staff. And you can have a chairperson of our land, of a cooperative who is not honest, and what happens is that land gets sold or new people are brought in as members and the community will lose its land. So we found these are the problems. So that's why a trust is important. It can acquire title in the name of the community and hold it for the benefit of the community, and the community members are automatically members of the trust. They're the ones who elect the directors. There are rules in the Constitution of Uganda requiring mandatorily for the directors of a trust to provide documents to beneficiaries. So the Busongora Community Land Trust that was formed has applied to have all the communal land that was given to Busongora to have some kind of registration so that it can have the protection of the police and the courts in case encroachers arrive. So, because now usually when they do, the courts will ask, where's the document proving that you own this land? And so that's what the trust is doing. Another thing the trust is doing is that it's going to provide handbooks, paid for hopefully by the Ministry of Lands, to teach people what the trust is supposed to be doing. And these are going to be in English and in Busongora, and I think ultimately also in other languages of the people who are in Kasese, because we don't only live with Busongora on Busongora lands. We have other neighbors, we have people who are our neighbors who do not speak Busongora, who also need to learn and benefit from cooperating with us and from sharing in projects, you see. The trust can also arrange for projects for what they call BOTs, build, operate and transfer projects, that can use part of the communal land, say a few acres, to build a factory, to employ the locals, the beneficiaries, and also to do what they call corporate social responsibility, where they can build a school for the community, a hospital for the community, they can build hotel facilities. In Kenya, where trusts are also used by the Maasai and other minority tribes, there is, for instance, one of the big trusts there has built hotels, and the community benefits last year about $6 million in profit, which all went to the community. So the community knows not to kill animals or to do poaching, because they realize that it brings tourists. So we want to do the same thing. The trust can do conservation, it can do community development, it can acquire land titles on behalf of the community and manage them in a transparent and equitable way. It can provide employment for the community. And of course, because trusts answer directly to the Minister of Lands and to the High Court, it is easy to monitor what they are doing, so that the trust is accountable to the public and to the beneficiaries. So this is why we think the trust system is gaining hold all over the world, but especially in Busongora. We needed long ago to have this trust put in place. We've only got it registered earlier this year. We've asked the government to come and launch it, and also give us a grant so that we can start with offices and property, vehicles and computers, and give us consultants who can help us learn how to manage the trust properly in the first few years where it finds its feet. And so what I want to do is tell the public and the community that they shouldn't be stressed. They should come and ask us questions, meet with us, and then if they need to have engagement with the trust, if they need to have more trustees added, they can recommend names. The names will be vetted by the directors in charge of that, and also the traditional authorities responsible for customary management of customary lands. They are also engaged in this. The elders will say, right, fine, we would like these trustees to serve on the trust, and such things. So we want people to come and participate in the trust, and those who are not Busongora can still come and ask what kind of projects we can do with them. What benefits does the trust have, not only for Busongora but for other communities as well. So that's why I wanted to have a chance to speak to the media, to let them know, to let the public know, to let the Busongora know that the trust exists. It's ready to work. It started working. We're trying to sensitize the community now. The people who have been sort of disengaged in this process, and so they need to come home and sit with the traditional leader, sit with the community elders, the clan heads, sit with the directors, sit with the trustees, and sit with those beneficiaries who are now beginning to see some results that are positive and beneficial, and see how to benefit the people who are not yet aware of how they can benefit from the trust, and also to see how they can participate in making the trust do work better.